You've checked all the boxes, followed all the rules, done everything you're supposed to. The education, the career, the relationships, the responsibilities. You've shown up for all of it. So why does it still feel like something's missing? Like you're standing in a life that looks right on paper, but feels hollow in your chest. If that's you, you're not imagining this, and you're definitely not alone. I'm Pamela Starusta, and I work with people who've reached what I call the achievement paradox, that place where you've done everything society told you would bring fulfillment, only to discover you're still searching. What we're going to talk about today might shift something fundamental in how you see your entire journey. Because here's what I've learned: that stuck feeling, it isn't about what you've done wrong. It's about living by someone else's map. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, and more importantly, what becomes possible when you finally understand it. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine spending years following a map. Every turn, every milestone, every checkpoint, you follow it perfectly. You cross finish lines, you achieve the goals, and everyone around you confirms, yes, you're doing it right. You're exactly where you should be. But here's the thing nobody told you: that map, it was never actually yours. It was handed to you by family expectations, by cultural narratives, by the version of success that gets celebrated in the world around you. And there's nothing wrong with any of those individual things. But somewhere along the way, following that external map became more important than listening to your own internal compass. This is especially true for those of us navigating midlife, because midlife has this way of forcing an awakening. The strategies that got you here, the achieving, the accommodating, the pushing through, they start feeling less like strengths and more like constraints. You begin noticing a gap, the gap between who you've become and who you actually are, between the life you've built and the life that actually lights you up. And here's what makes this so disorienting: you can't point to anything obviously wrong. That's what makes you question yourself. You think, I should be grateful. I have so much. What's wrong with me that this still doesn't feel like enough? Let me be clear: nothing is wrong with you. What you're experiencing is misalignment. It's the natural consequence of living by external expectations rather than internal truth. And that stuck feeling, it's not failure. It's actually your system trying to get your attention. It's the part of you that knows, has always known, that there's a different way forward. So why does this often surface in midlife? Why not earlier? Because in our earlier years, we're often in execution mode. We're building, we're achieving, establishing, and we're nurturing. There's a momentum to it that keeps us moving forward. And honestly, the external validation we get from others often feels like enough. Getting the degree feels like progress. Landing the job feels like success. Seeing our children and relationships grow and flourish, each milestone brings a hit of accomplishment that temporarily quiets any deeper questions or desires we have. But midlife changes the equation. You've accumulated enough experience to recognize patterns. You've hit enough milestones to know that checking boxes doesn't automatically equal fulfillment. You've lived long enough to start asking different questions, not, am I doing this right, but is this actually mine? This is where perspective becomes everything. And by perspective, I don't mean positive thinking or reframing. I mean the ability to step back and see your story, really see it with fresh eyes, to recognize where you've been living by inheritance rather than intention, where you've been performing rather than being. Because here's the truth: your own voice has been there all along. It's been there in every moment you felt that whisper of, this doesn't quite fit, in every achievement that felt hollow, in every time you caught yourself going through the motions. The question isn't how to find that voice, it's how to finally start listening to it. This is where the real work begins. Not more doing, not more pushing, but a fundamental shift in perspective. What I've learned through my own journey and through working with others is that there's a difference between recognizing patterns and feeling imprisoned by them. When you're stuck, patterns feel like chains. This is not how I am. This is just how my life is. But when you shift your perspective, those same patterns become information. They become a map where you've been, which helps you consciously choose where you're going. This is what I call the positive perspective method. And it moves through three distinct phases. First, see and understand your story, not to judge it or fix it, but to truly see it, to recognize which parts are authentically yours and which parts you've been carrying for others, to identify where external expectations became internal beliefs without conscious consent, and to see your past hardships and experiences as gifts of growth, not failures. Second, reclaim your power. This is where you move from awareness into agency, where you start making choices based on internal alignment rather than external approval, where shoulds stop being your primary decision-making framework. And third, experience freedom, not as a destination you arrive at, but as a way of moving through the world, where you're no longer consistently second guessing, constantly performing, constantly seeking validation from outside yourself. This is where your life feels like yours. And here's what's important. This isn't about burning everything down. It's not about dramatic reinvention or starting over. It's about coming home to yourself and discovering that home might look different than you imagined, but it feels exactly right. Picture this for a moment. You're running towards a finish line. You've been running for years, you're tired, but you keep pushing because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. And then one day you stop, not because you've quit, not because you've failed, but because you finally look up and realize this finish line you've been racing towards, you never actually chose that finish line. Someone else set it there. Someone else decided this was the destination worth reaching. And in that moment of recognition, something shifts. You're no longer asking, how do I get there faster? You're asking a completely different question. And that is, where do I actually want to go? That's the moment everything changes, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And your own path, the one that was always there, waiting quietly beside that well-worn road, finally comes into focus. So if you're sitting here recognizing yourself in this, if you're feeling that mix of relief and maybe a little bit of grief, a little bit of yes, finally someone understands combined with okay, but now what? I want you to know there is a way through this, and it doesn't require more pushing, more achieving, more proving. It requires something actually much simpler, the willingness to look at your story with fresh perspective, to question the map you've been following, to listen to that voice you've been trained to ignore. The path forward isn't about working harder. It's about working differently. It's about aligned action instead of exhausted effort. It's about building a life that doesn't just look good from the outside, but feels true from the inside. Before we wrap up, I want to give you something practical, something you can do today to see if you're living by the wrong map. I call this the one question alignment check. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what part of my life no longer feels like mine, even if it still looks good to everyone else? Write the first thing that comes up. That is the doorway to your next chapter. That is the voice you've been ignoring. And that moment of honesty is the beginning of emotional freedom. If this conversation resonated with you and you're ready to explore your own next step, I've created something that can help. Check the link in the description for a clarity call. It's a private session where we look at your specific situation and map out your path forward. No pressure, no pitch, just clarity, perspective, and direction. And if you want to continue exploring these topics, hit the subscribe, because this is just the beginning of what's possible for you. Thank you for being a valuable part of this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.